Alright guys, I am going to go over our homework from 5.1 day 1. I'm attaching the answer key, but I thought it would be beneficial for you guys to see some of the problems worked out. So before I do that, I want you guys to remember the Pythagorean identities that are going to help us. The one you're going to use a lot is cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. Okay? So you're going to use that one quite a bit. Alright? Then the other two come from that. Okay? But it's not like you got to memorize them, but 1 plus tan squared equals secant squared. And then cotangent squared plus 1 equals cosecant squared. So those are the three that we will be using a lot. Okay? The other things we're going to be using a lot are the quotient identities. Remember cosine over sine. If you guys remember that, I mentioned, remember the C's on top. So that one goes with cotangent. And then the reciprocal is sine over cosine, which is tangent. Okay? Those are the ones that we're going to be using a lot of on these. So, hope you guys are loving life, enjoying some trig identities. Okay, so number 1, we've got tan x times cosine x. One thing I want to tell you guys as I post answer keys throughout this unit, some of these have several different ways to do the problems. So please keep in mind that just because you did it different doesn't mean that you did it wrong, okay? And something I wrote on the notes was to switch to sine and cosine a lot, okay? So technically, guys, this is equal to 1 over cotangent. That is a true statement. But that doesn't help us simplify anything, so we don't use that. Sometimes we would, but in this case, we're going to switch tangent to be sine over cosine, and then we're going to leave that cosine over 1. And then if you look at that, the cosines can cancel, and you're left with sine x. Notice I leave the x and theta off quite a bit. I'm sure you guys are used to that by now. All right. Number 2. We've got secant theta, cosine theta. This is one where the reciprocal identity does work. Secant is 1 over cosine. We're going to times it by cosine. I put it over 1. You don't have to, but putting it over 1 helps you kind of see whether it's in the top or bottom of the fraction. So cancel those. And number 2, you should have gotten 1. All right? Now, let's look at number 3. 3 was a little tricky. 1 plus tangent squared over cosecant squared. Anytime you see a 1 and a squared, you need to look at those identities, okay? You may not always remember them, but you need to keep your notes. You need to write those identities somewhere and refer back to them all unit, okay? But if you look at 1 plus tangent squared, you're going to see that it equals secant squared, okay? Some of you turned in your homework and you left it like that, which is fine, but moving forward, you have to simplify it more, okay? Now, if you think about this, I'm going to move down here. Secant squared is equal to what if we're thinking in terms of cosines and sines? Hopefully you said cosine squared. That's the numerator. Secant squared is 1 over cosine squared. Then the bottom is going to be in sines and cosines. Cosecant squared would be 1 over sine squared. Okay? Everybody got that? Now, we don't like a fraction underneath another fraction. So, I got my handy dandy different color markers. Let's go with pink. You multiply by the reciprocal, which in this case would be sine squared over 1. Whatever you do to the bottom, just like we're in class, right? Do to the top. So right now, guys, the bottom has canceled out. We multiply by the reciprocals. Those are gone. This is all that's left. So you got 1 times sine squared, which is sine squared. Cosine squared times 1 is cosine squared. Again, I don't want you to leave it as that. That is equal to, it's a quotient identity, tangent squared. So that's what you should have gotten for number 3. All right, I would say any questions, but in class you probably wouldn't ask any, so I doubt you have any now. Okay, so there's number 3. Hopefully this is helping you guys get this a little bit. All right, number 4. Number 4 is a quick one. Some of these are going to be really quick. Some of them take a little longer. It just depends. And I look at them as like puzzles. Okay, you got to kind of figure out what the next step is. One thing that's going to be hard is a lot of you are going to look at these and be like, oh, when Miss P does it, I get it. I just can't seem to get it on my own. But keep in mind, this is one day. Okay, we're going to get practice and get better. So cosecant, we know, is the same as 1 over sine. Sines cancel. And we get 1. All right. Number 5 is all multiplication. Cosine x, cosecant x, tan x. Those are all multiplication. Again, more times than not, I will put them into sines and cosines. Again, I put it in the notes because sines and cosines can cancel out. They can combine and such. In this case, this is already cosine, so I'm going to put cosine over 1. Cosecant would be 1 over sine. And then tangent is 1 over cotangent, guys. That is true, but that won't help us. We want it to be in sines and cosines. So tangent's going to be sine over cosine. Okay? Ooh, and yeah, you look at that. And they do not have to be next to each other to cancel out. It's all multiplication, so it doesn't matter. This cancels with that. That cancels with that. A few of you wrote 0. If everything cancels out, we are left with 1. All right. So that was number 5. 6 is a little tricky. A lot of you got 6 wrong, but that's okay. I just want you to try. Let's look at 6. We've got 1 plus tangent squared over cosine squared. Okay, so there's that 1 plus tangent squared. Look at your Pythagorean identities, and you should get secant squared. So this is equal to secant squared over cosine squared. Okay? Almost off the board there, aren't I? I think I went off the board on one of the earlier problems. Whoops. I need to work more to the left. Sorry. All right. Now, let's look here. We're going to come back around here. Remember, we want to be in sines and cosines. The bottom's already good. The top is going to become 1 over cosine squared. The bottom is already cosine squared. Okay, remember, we do not want to have a fraction over, it's not really a fraction, but we don't want a fraction over another number either. So again, this is over 1, and we want to multiply by its reciprocal. So what would its reciprocal be? 1 over cosine squared is its reciprocal. Whatever you do to the bottom, you got to do to the top. Okay? So the bottom's gone. Up top, it's multiplication. So it's going to equal 1 over cosine to the 4th. That's a 4. Because add the exponents, okay? Now, that's fine to leave it like that. Let's say hypothetically the directions said, simplify your answers, no decimals. I did not mean no decimals. No fractions. 1 over cosine is the same as, secant. And guys, the same rules apply whether it's squared, whether it's to the 4th, whether it's to the 1st. Okay, so this would be secant to the 4th. Again, this one's okay. It's just in case sometimes down the road if the directions said no fractions. All right, 2 more. We're almost there. And guys, I just want to thank you. You did a good good job on this assignment. This is our first assignment for real. It's something brand new. These are different times for us. I just ask that you keep giving me your effort. This is hard, and I'm going to do my best, and please feel free to reach out with questions, concerns, but just keep trying. You guys did a great job on this first worksheet. Number 7, we've got cosine x times secant x minus cosine x. Okay? Now, remember how I said, okay, put everything into sine and cosine. Some of you did it first, which is not wrong. Okay? I personally like to distribute first so that I don't deal with fractions while I'm distributing. So we don't want those parentheses there. Okay? So we're going to distribute. We're going to distribute that in, and we get cosine x, secant x, and then we're going to distribute that in, and that's minus cosine squared. Okay? All right. Good start. Good start. Now we're going to do everything into sines and cosines. Okay? Cosine, and I put it over 1. Secant is 1 over cosine, and that's already in cosine. And some of you guys will start seeing stuff as it's happening. But I still want to see your work on these, guys. This is what's going to be hard. I'm not sure as far as assessment right now. We're nowhere near worrying about it because we got a lot to learn on these trig identities. So don't worry about assessment right now. But I do want you to be showing all of your work. What does this reduce to? Yep. Somebody out there said 1. Now, a few of you left your answer like this. 1 minus cosine squared. Okay? If this was a test or quiz, you would get most of your credit. But we're not done. You need to look at that trig identity. Pythagorean identity. I've talked about this before. Okay? This comes from this. Okay? So if we wanted to get a 1 minus cosine, we would need to do this. So that's gone. 1 minus cosine is what we have here. And 1 minus cosine is equal to what? Ding, ding, ding. Sine squared. Okay, so number 7 should be sine squared. All right, last one. Yay. Again, guys, we are just going to be practicing these for quite a while. Okay, we're not in a big hurry. I want us to get good at these. So please, if you're still struggling a little bit, don't panic. Oh, last one's pretty quick. Secant x, sine x. Remember, again, good starting point is to put them into sines and cosines. Secant is 1 over cosine. So then a lot of you, to this point, we've had stuff cancel, and a lot of you will be like, well, nothing cancels. Well, that's true. But we're going to smush it together and simplify. So we get sine up top, cosine on the bottom. A few of you left it like that, okay? Full credit, all right? I want you to simplify that. And it's sine over cosine is equal to tangent. So that was number 8, tangent x. Okay? Now, the last thing I want to mention, you're going to be doing some today that use this Pythagorean identity. Okay? We just did one where if you subtract the cosine squared off, sine squared is equal to 1 minus cosine squared, okay? And then with that being said, cosine squared is equal to 1 minus sine squared, okay? Those both come from this Pythagorean identity, all right? Now, there's a few on here today that are backwards. And what I mean by backwards is it has cosine squared minus 1, okay? So if we try to make this have a cosine squared minus 1, I'm going to put my 1 here. So we've got, oh heck, let me erase this. So right now I've got sine squared plus cosine squared minus 1 equals 0, okay? We're trying to get this by itself. In order to do that, what would we have to do next? We would have to subtract sine squared off. So cosine squared minus 1 is equal to negative sine squared. So when you guys see me or hear me say backwards, okay, if these are backwards, it's going to be a negative value. So if you end up with a sine squared minus 1, that's going to be negative cosine, okay? And I know that's confusing, but the way that I realize backwards, notice right now, here's the original. The 1 is first. So sine would be minus this off, 1 minus. But if it ends up being backwards, if it ends up being minus 1, then your answer is going to be a negative. There's a few on today's worksheet where you're going to be using this one, where it's negative, okay? Again, the main thing is to work in sines and cosines. Fractions, you're going to multiply by reciprocals. Again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Technically, my office hours are 9:30 to 10:30, but I'm checking Google Classroom all day. I'm checking my emails, so please feel free to work on that. I also had a few kids set up a Zoom if you need extra help. I just can't Zoom with one person, but just get a group. But I know this is shocking, but one of you guys would have to set it up because I don't really know how to set up Zoom right now, and I'm not trying. All right, so I just want to say I miss you guys. Please give today a good effort. Good luck in your other classes. And if anything's going on, please just communicate with me. You know I'll be flexible and help you the best I can. Take care and be safe. I'll talk to you soon.